All right, we'll go ahead and get started as folks continue to join us. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be in the world. My name is Sophia Aaron, and I'm the Global Blockchain Business Council's Director of Communications. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to GBBC's Virtual Members Forum. This is a weekly webinar we host showcasing the innovative work of our members around the world. And today we have the pleasure to be joined by Alex Nascimento and Tony Maciel, co-founders of 7CC Blockchain Investments. They're going to be presenting today on how they're bridging the gap between traditional capital markets and the blockchain world in Latin America. And so just briefly before we begin, I'd like to formally introduce our presenters. So Alex is a serial entrepreneur and he's a founding partner of 7CC Blockchain Investments and 7Visions LatAm Digital, a platform we'll be learning about more today. He is also a faculty and co-founder of blockchain at UCLA, where he lectures blockchain business applications and security tokens. Additionally, Alex is a best-selling author of the STO Financial Revolution, a textbook which covers regulated and compliant fundraising via blockchain. He received his MBA from the UCLA Anderson School of Management and has developed training, marketing, and blockchain strategies for companies in the United States, the European Union, Latin America, and Asia. Our second presenter, Tony Maciel, has over 40 years of experience in international trade, finance, and investing. He is a founding partner of 7CC Blockchain Investments and 7Visions LatAm Digital. Mr. Maciel has held senior positions with financial services firms in New York and LatAm. He was previously at Lehman Brothers in their financial services division, where he was responsible for advising Latin American institutions, private clients, and government agencies on their global investment portfolios. He has also held senior positions at Merrill Lynch, New York, and Banco de Crédito y Comercio in Brazil. To everyone joining us today, we welcome your questions at any point during today's presentation. You can enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Thank you so much, Alex and Tony, for taking the time to join us. We'll hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. It's always a pleasure. Thanks everyone who's joining and listening to us from all around the world. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm also very excited, and it's an honor to be the GBBC ambassador for Uruguay. So a little bit for those of you who haven't met me before, and we haven't met, I'm originally Brazilian American. Tony Maciel is my older brother. And in 2017, as I was teaching at UCLA wanted to start a blockchain initiative. I was pointed to start that initiative, and very fastly I understood that blockchain was going to revolutionize financial industries. So I called my older brother and convinced him that this was going to be the new frontier of financial inclusion. Since 2017, we've been working as a firm called 7CC Blockchain Investments, which has been looking at the institutionalization of blockchain, mainly bringing blockchain and crypto products to the institutional world. Lately, we merged with Visions, which is an investment and private equity firm in Latin America, to form 7Visions, which focus mainly in Latin America. But I'll let Tony introduce himself, and then we'll go through the presentation.
Sure. Well, look, in fact, it took Alex a little bit of time to convince me to stop what I was doing in the clean tech space and focus more on the blockchain space. I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to do so. And as we started drilling down on it, it made sense to look at this as a revolutionary technology that could really change the paradigms associated to capital, access to it, and how money moves around the world and in regions. Particularly, we thought Latin America was a specific region, and that's why we formed the partnerships with Vision.
So we'll go here. As our main focus, as you guys can see on this, title slide, is that we focus on Latin America, and we're looking to bridge the gap between traditional capital markets and the blockchain world.
So as I said earlier, the idea was 7CC, which was the firm that Alex and I founded, looked around and we chose Latin America or identified Latin America as a place where we thought the biggest impact could be felt. And then we looked for a local partner that had a lot of asset expertise. So based on that, we partnered and created a vehicle called 7Visions Latin American Digital, which is focused on the region and tokenization of assets in the region. The partnership has long history of working together. We've had a lot of experience working with the team at Visions, and I think we formed together this 7Visions platform, which will be able to advance a lot of assets around the world.
So just as a concluding sentence to this slide, 7CC brings like all the blockchain and crypto expertise that I and the team together with Tony have been building since 2016. And Visions brings all the independent asset management of alternative asset classes in Latin America for institutional and global investors. And that's why we formed 7Visions. Oops. So we think that Latin America here is at a unique moment as we've been seeing the evolution of the ecosystem in the last couple of years, right? We saw a first wave of adoption here in Latin America, which was a distribution network and the rise of exchanges. We see Mercado Bitcoin, which is the largest exchange in Latin America, with an array of other exchanges and distributors in the region. Today, we go north of like 30 exchanges just in Brazil, not to mention Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, and so forth. We saw then a second wave a couple of years ago with some of our peers here in the region, such as Hashtags and QR Asset, issuing ETFs. And those we believe are beta-oriented products. But the position that we want to take and that we are taking on a daily basis is a position where we see a lot of alpha-oriented opportunity, right? We believe that developing content with an alpha position and focusing on institutional investors is still something that is a blue ocean in Latin America. So a little bit about us as we formed this partnership. We founded 7Visions in 2021. I think it's an important factor for everyone hearing us that we are a Delaware LLC, which is very friendly for international investors and partners. And we operate out of this beautiful headquarters here in São Paulo, which we welcome everyone that's listening to us and all the members to come pay us a visit. Our ambition is to be the leading provider of real assets tokenizations in LatAm. Most of my research at UCLA, and given the textbook we wrote, is on security tokens. And we believe that there is a huge opportunity for tokenization of real assets, that origination is done with all institutional grade procedures and distribution of those assets in LatAm. And then by utilizing blockchain technology, we believe that we're going to democratize the access to these institutional grade products to the wider population of Latin America. We're going to go over on the presentation, and we're happy to do it on the Q&A, about some of the characteristics of these assets and their uniqueness. But just to give you guys a little bit of a flavor, things like tokenizing industrial farms is something that is very far away from the retail investor access in Latin America, and something that we're looking at with a lot of focus. So mainly we're looking here at bridging this gap of traditional finance, ESG products, and the crypto world. The problem that we're trying to address here, and that we think we have a very solid team to tackle this problem, is that we're seeing a huge growth in retail user base in Latin America. If those of you who have been following the latest news, we're seeing like SoftBank make huge investments in Latin America, pushing crypto distribution across all their investment channels, including online banks such as Nubank, or the growth of Mercado Bitcoin and other exchanges or banks like Genial, right? But we believe that there is a lack of institutional grade products that are not just crypto native like altcoins or Bitcoin. And we're seeing a huge opportunity on that. The second problem that we're looking to tackle is a low secondary market liquidity for these assets. Historically, around the world, we see that security tokens have low liquidity. And we look at tackling this problem with our team of traditional finance guys and making liquidity pools and market making. Then there's also a third problem, which is the mismatch between institutional investment requirements. Just like around the world, we have the same requirements here in LatAm, and the product availability. They want exposure to crypto, but currently right now we have only beta-oriented products or private funds. So here's kind of like the summary of the solution that we're proposing, right? We're proposing to democratize and institutionalize blockchain products in LatAm by developing institutional grade products, supporting these products that we're representing, not only our proprietary products, but products of our partners, including the ones that potentially are listening to us, with retail distribution, market making, and liquidity pools. I think it's very important here to understand that we're not in the distribution front. We're looking at, we position ourselves mostly as an investment bank. And then we're partnering with top retail distributors, including banks and crypto exchanges, to access retail investors. You want to comment on it?
No, on the next one.
So here's a little bit of our team. Two of our founding partners are not here today, which is Amaury Jr., who used to run Bank of America for Latin America, and Fabio Greco, who is his partner at Bank of America. Tony and I, we already made our introductions, but we also have Eugene Chow, who is our CTO and partner, a PhD of MIT. Amaury is also a PhD of MIT. Our portfolio manager, Sho, who has an MBA from Chicago, and one of our commercial leads, Raleigh Perdehova, who has a vast experience in Canadian banking. So we're 7 partners. We have a team of different backgrounds. As you guys can see, aside from Eugene and I, most of the people have investment banking grade credentials. But we also have a team here in the office of about 20 analysts and researchers that are supporting us, including João. So here's our business model. I'll let Tony introduce the business model, and happy to take questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, fundamentally, if you think about it as a business, I think we should be thought of as a business that's really a tokenization business, and we name it as a digital investment bank, but what we're trying to do there is originate, structure, and organize through partnerships distribution of the tokens that represent underlying real assets. And then the second piece of that business, what we're looking to do is support those assets, because we think the problem that currently exists is that guys put a product out there, but then there's no aftermarket support. So we'll be providing liquidity pools and market making from our own capital after distribution to support that for the base. A third area that we're looking at, which we think also adds connectivity to the first two, is an asset management business. And our first launch of product, and we have it a little further down in the presentation, is the first fund of funds for crypto-based investment managers. We think that's a missing product, and it's a first entry product. Okay, and then the idea is that since there's a technology twist to all those businesses, the lab, which is run by Alex and in conjunction with the team at the UCLA Blockchain Lab and in other universities around the world, supports that with technological analytics, research, and development. And I'll let him talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the idea here is that the top layer of the business model is very much analogous to what we see in traditional finance, but we believe that the lab will continue to develop technology to bring institutional money to the blockchain space, right? We're looking to do research, application, and tech development on the lab. Currently, the lab has an Ethereum-based tokenization platform, which we're looking to expand and bring in other blockchains, such as Solana, Cardano, Celo, Avalanche, which we're all in conversations. But we're looking to take the lab as kind of a venture builder, but a venture builder with a focus of not only starting startups that can be disruptive, but technology that can bring in institutional grade clients. One of the things we're looking at is, for example, Uniswap is a great product, but the lack of knowing who's your counterparty on the other side makes it very hard for institutional clients to participate. So decentralized exchanges and automatic market making for institutional grade clients is something that we're looking at the lab. Any other thing you would like to mention?
No, I think that's.
So here's kind of like our product flow. We have a focus on 3 categories of products. We're looking at structured credit, which is Vision's native experience in Latin America. We're looking at agricultural assets to be tokenized, given that Vision is probably one of the largest private investors in the agricultural industrial sector in Latin America. And because of the rise of ESG and the importance that we see in environmental assets in the current stage that we all live in the world, we're looking to tokenize public and private environmental assets. All that tokenization is going to be done at the lab and done through our proprietary tokenization platform. That those assets are going to move into the top layer of that business model, which is 7Visions, which is then through our distribution agreements and distribution channels are going to be offered to end customers. So again, I just want to make an effort to point out that we're not looking to reach out end customers. We're looking at making partnerships with distribution channels. So it's a good conversation when we go to exchanges and we go to banks and we tell them we're not competing with you. We're developing institutional grade products and we're going to make those products available so that you, our distribution partners, can offer them to your clients, which are looking to have access and exposure to those products. So a little bit of our current initiatives. I know we're doing great in time, but I want to have time for Q&A. I see that we already have like 5 questions in Q&A. But I'll talk some about our current initiatives and Tony can add on to it. So our digital investment bank and liquidity support is looking currently at structured government credits in Latin America, government bonds, IOUs with sovereign credit rating. We're looking at legal claims, tokenized legal claims that have high yield. And we're also looking to tokenize microloans, which have impressive high yields. And we believe that we can compress those yields so that it becomes a more fair environment to both the people that are taking microloans, given the unbanked population in Latin America, but also provide very attractive returns to the token holders.
I think it just may be worthwhile mentioning that in those 3 asset classes, there's a deep knowledge and embedded in the team, not only for structuring them, originating them, and evaluating them. And that they're all 3 hard to access from a retail point of view.
Yeah. So like Tony mentioned, on the second bucket there, the asset management, we already structured a fund of funds. Some of probably the people who are listening to us here are some of the fund managers that we already spoke with. We believe that the fund of funds has an incredible opportunity because if you're in the space, you know how hard it is to get access to some of the best funds in the industry. They're not only pulverized around the world, but they have like high barriers of entry because of the minimum ticket price. Given our connections and history in the space, we're able to have access to some of these larger funds and then aggregating them together, making it very easy for some of our investors to have access to these funds at a much lower entry point and minimum ticket. We also are filing some global ETFs with a crypto ESG profile, and those are all in filing stages. Some of you who have been following what's happening in the US with spot ETFs, we're very close to that movement, and we see that very soon that movement is going to get massive traction. Anything about the fund?
No.
Then on the third bucket there, which is the part that I lead, and I'm very proud of, it's our 7Visions Venture Lab. Aside from continuing to push the expansion and integration of the tokenization platform with additional blockchains outside from Ethereum, we're currently doing a Bitcoin mining pilot in Paraguay. We're doing an expansion of a IoT and 5G decentralized network deployment in agricultural areas so that IoT can be offered to industrial farms. As I mentioned, we're continually building integration of other blockchains like Avalanche, Solana, and Cardano into our tokenization platform. And we believe, like we mentioned before, that automated market making and liquidity pool developments for institutional grade clients, making sure that KYC and AML are of the best grade, is also something that we see a lot of value in. Those are some of our current initiatives. We're happy to go offline and deep dive into them if you're interested, or if you see an opportunity in Latin America that you would like us to take a look at. This is our contact information. I believe we did a good job in time here. This is a broad, but also a summary of all the things we're getting involved. And the ask that I would like to make to all of those 44 participants that are listening to us here is that we want to be your partner in Latin America. So if you're looking to tokenize your existing assets, or you're looking to distribute some Latin American assets to your user base, we would very much welcome that conversation. So if you have assets in your balance sheet that you would like to tokenize and distribute in Latin America, or if you see value in tokenizing or distributing structured credits, environmental assets, or agricultural assets that are LatAm originated to your user base, we would very much welcome that conversation. Tony and I are available via cell phone or email, and I believe that we can easily connect in some of the future GBBC events. Maybe now we could open up for Q&A.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've had a number of questions come in, so I'll just sort of run down the list, and maybe you can expand upon some of the things you already touched on, as I think some of these questions overlap with some of the content. For starters, someone asked, what are some interesting or unique challenges to working in LatAm?
Well, that's an interesting.
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that the issue about working in LatAm, there's not a specific challenge, I think, because LatAm, or especially Brazil, has been an early adopter of technology for a while. And if you look at the curve of access, there is a faster and steeper curve of access to digital assets in LatAm, or specifically Brazil, than in most of the rest of the world. So we found it a very welcoming environment. From a tech point of view, I mean, there's a lot of qualified people. We haven't had trouble kind of working with people and finding qualified people to work with. I mean, there's some perception issues sometimes because people looking from outside of LatAm sometimes are a little uncomfortable with it, but we don't see it as an issue, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Tony and I are Brazilian Americans. Our two other partners are native Brazilians with a vast international experience managing money for global investors or institutional grade investors. So on the team side, we think we're very comfortable providing that bridge. Obviously, Latin America, like any other BRIC country, is a region that you need to know the region because it has its own characteristics and challenges, just like the person who asked the question probably knows. I think that one thing to point out, like Tony mentioned, is the vast adoption of technology in LatAm, especially in Brazil. Crunchbase just released a report that pointed out that out of the 27 unicorns in Latin America, 21 are Brazilian. So we're based here in São Paulo, Brazil, but we have a vast network around Latin America, and we think that Latin America is probably the next rising crypto hub.
To add to that, are there certain nations or jurisdictions within Latin America that you're sort of targeting in addition to Brazil?
Yeah, we have projects running in Argentina, Paraguay. I'm the GBBC ambassador for Uruguay. You know, metaphorically, people here in Latin America name Uruguay as the Switzerland of Latin America. So I welcome you guys to come visit. And some of the regions we're tackling first, but we believe that Latin America in general is a booming industry for blockchain initiatives.
Definitely. Kind of circling back to the assets that you're tokenizing. You talked a lot about environmental assets and microloans. Maybe you could give us a little bit more insight into the types of environmental assets that you're tokenizing and the other key verticals that you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, look, our thinking around the environmental asset space is that there are two things. I mean, first of all, the obvious asset is carbon credits, which is what people are all looking at, and that's going to be the low-hanging fruit, and that's what we're starting with. And but we do believe that the future isn't only in carbon credits. The future is in biodiversity and looking at genetics and fauna and water and other assets that contribute to the targets associated with Celsius grade limits around the world. So if you look at globally speaking, I mean, we think that particularly Brazil, and that's why we chose that asset, has a very native contribution to make to the world in that asset space. Okay, and there's been a lot of discussion going around about, well, how do you preserve the Amazon? How do you do this? We think it's a broader discussion than just the Amazon. And we're going to be looking to tokenize a broad range of products. If you look at Latin America, or you look at Brazil in particular, about half the environmental assets, native forests in particular, are in the hands of government entities, federal, state, and municipalities. The other half are in private hands, but principally agricultural reserves. So we're looking at those two providers of assets, or two providers, and try to transform what today is a cost to them in terms of keeping those things alive and preserving them into a revenue stream. And it makes sense also to recognize that this, along with some of the agricultural assets and the structured credits, although they're originated in LatAm, they are global assets. We don't look to only distribute in LatAm. We look to distribute on a global platform. So whoever is listening and thinking about it, don't think of us only as a distribution channel, a distribution case for Latin American assets to Latin Americans. I mean, we think that the three spaces that we look at, environmental, agriculture, and the structured credits, are assets that can have global appeal.
Thank you. Somebody asked, what are the key design considerations for tokenizing assets for institutional investors? Perhaps you could speak to some of the security and regulatory considerations you need to take into account.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure. So for those of you who have been following the evolution of called security tokens in LatAm, Brazil has been one of the leading environments for such, right? Like I pointed out, the second wave here, we saw better oriented products coming out of Brazil, such as hashtags, and my kudos for hashtags and QR and that team for launching ETFs in Latin America before things were available in the US, as an example. Other examples is that in Brazil, the assets that we're tokenizing are by default not considered securities by the local regulator. So we're very comfortable at tokenizing those assets as of now. And moving forward, the local regulator, CVM, which is the SEC of Brazil, has a very strong team that has a deep understanding, Maeda and his team, of digital assets. So there is a sandbox going on in Brazil, and GBBC has been instrumental in helping that sandbox evolve into allowing tokenization of real assets to become a reality. To address the question at its core, I believe that our process, it's run by, I would say, 3 steps, right? We originate the assets with institutional grade due diligence and quality, and that's Vision's DNA. Then we box those assets in a crypto environment, making sure that we're compliant with all the regulatory frameworks and guardrails that the local regulator allows us to do. And then we make sure that we're partnering with some of the best institutional grade distributors so that KYC, AML, and all the proper due diligence is done throughout that chain. So our focus is on origination, making sure that we're regulated properly and that our distributors are all institutional grade.
I would just add one thing to that is that, we've spent a lot of time working on the connectivity between the real asset or the underlying asset and the actual token from a legal perspective. Okay, because sometimes as we've analyzed products around the world, we find that connectivity is not as robust as it should be, and certainly not as robust as, significant institutional investors would require it to be. So, I mean, a lot of, when we box it in the technology piece, we also take a lot of care for that connectivity between the real world legal structure and the token to be as robust as possible.
Oh, that absolutely makes sense. Somebody was asking if banks need to understand blockchain in order to benefit from 7Visions. I know you talked about the fact that you've been able to attract top talent to work with your team. I'm wondering what kind of in-house blockchain and digital asset knowledge is required from the financial institution side in order to best leverage the products and services that 7Visions is offering.
Sure, and that's a very good question. And some of I'm going to call them old school GBBC members are Brazilian banks. The team at BTG Pactual and Portillo are great at doing that and very innovative in releasing some of the first institutional grade security tokens in the world, right? So pair that with a lot of the investments that were made by SoftBank in LatAm, we have a vast understanding and adoption of banks in Brazil and Latin America in general about blockchain and digital assets. And natively, because of the unbanked, I would say, landscape and vast community in Latin America, crypto has been adopted at a large speed in Latin America. And this is a data point that is a few years old. So I remember when I joined GBBC, invited by Sandra as a faculty from UCLA, and it was one of the first, waves of adoption here in Latin America. In a matter of a year, we had more crypto holders or crypto wallets in Brazil than we had individual investors in B3, which is the stock exchange of Brazil. So that for us forms a perfect storm. Institutional players in Brazil understand blockchain. They're very innovative. Online banking in Brazil and LatAm is booming because of obviously the reasons of online bank bringing on the unbanked to their platforms. So that digitally native online bank client is asking for crypto and digital assets. So that kind of demand and supply makes the region here one of like the most advanced institutional ecosystem in the blockchain space.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you tuning in, we've also had QR Asset Management join the virtual members forum and present a little bit on what they're doing and the ETFs that they've launched. So I think, Alex, this is definitely geared towards you as also a lecturer and professor at UCLA. Folks are asking, what are some of the educational opportunities in Latin America for students to get involved and become part of the industry?
Yeah, so there is a vast opportunity here in Latin America. Some of like the best universities that we have very close ties with, like Unicamp, for those who are familiar here in Latin America, already have blockchain and coding classes. USP has a which is one of the best universities here in Sao Paulo, also does that. Our quant strategist, who is a faculty of statistics at the Federal University of the state of Rio, is also running a blockchain course. And I'm happy to connect you, some of those people who are probably listening from Brazil, to those initiatives. And frankly, as an educator, I've been very proud of the work that some of my peers here at different universities have been doing about teaching people about blockchain and this disruptive technology, because we all as a faculty community believe that blockchain, coding, and frontier tech is a great opportunity to lift people from poverty to having their own ability to rise in the social and economic ecosystem.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. We can share some of those resources with you all when we circulate the video. Also a link to the book Alex wrote on the STO revolution. So great. Well, before we close out here, we just want to ask you what is your vision for the next 2, 5, 10 years for 7Visions CC? Where do we go next?
Well, I think, to be very honest with you, I mean, we don't have small ambitions. We want to be the premier provider of real asset tokenizations, originated in Latin America, distributed throughout the world. We want to be the go-to place for institutional quality intelligence, products, and investment alternatives. You know, if you will, sort of like the provider of product to the distribution that's being created around the world. You know?
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a very insightful presentation. It's been great to learn about the work that you're doing and the steps you're taking to also grow the ecosystem in Latin America and provide these opportunities, not just to institutional investors in the region, but also globally.
Yes.
Thank you so much to everyone who dialed in and for your insightful questions. We will be sharing a recording of this presentation as well. And we have Alex and Tony's contact information, which we'll also distribute should you wish to learn more. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for having us, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.